Hi everyone, Jai Hind, and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. My name is Bhanwar Singh, ex India 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012. Now over here, I want you to imagine that you are standing just near the Lohit River that flows in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, over here you see that there is one out of the 7 or 8 of the white-bellied herons that actually flies across. And where you are standing, there is the site that had been earmarked by the engineers as well, which would be the hydroelectric power project that will be installed over the Lohit River. And that will be to the tune of 1200 megawatt power generation. Now, both of these scenarios, they actually show the India in the future. That is where actually one of them, they pertains to the water, the energy security. But at the same time, the another one, it pertains to the biodiversity conservation as well. And that is what we are going to decode in today's session. That can one time, it can wipe out India's rarest bird, that is white-bellied heron, or also known as Ardea insignis, that is its scientific name. Now, this is quite important because we have, when it comes to this white-bellied heron, so it is the second largest heron species that is there in the world. And we have just about 6 to 9 of the individuals which are estimated to be remaining in India. But when it comes to the global population, the total population is estimated to be somewhere around 50 to 60 of the individuals. Now, this is quite important because ultimately, because of the threat perception. So this had been elevated to the category of critically endangered by the IUCN in 2007. Now over here, this bird is basically under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. That is the highest the legal protection that is available for any of the species in India. And also when it comes to its habitat, remember that actually there is the free-flowing, low-disturbance Himalayan rivers with a mature riparian forest, and ultimately they are basically not adapted to the altered flows or even to the reservoirs as well. So this is quite important because we are talking about the conservation of one of the rarest bird species in India, that is white-bellied heron. Now, why this bird matters or why it actually represents the complete river? It is basically when it comes to the species, so it is an indicator species because its presence, it actually signals the water quality, the fish stock, and even the habitat integrity. Now, over here, this is the live gauge of the river health, and that is why white-bellied heron, it is actually the indicator species that you can say. It is also the umbrella species because ultimately, when it comes to protection of the habitat or protection of white-bellied heron, automatically it shields the co-occurring species as well. Like we have takin, we have Assamese macaque, even the jungle cat, and the large Indian civet as well. And this species is also the flagship species because ultimately it is rare, and its visibility make it a public-facing symbol that can mobilize the conservation attention and even the funding as well. And that is why we are talking about the one bird species that actually represents the complete river geography as well. Now, this is quite important because over here you can see that when we are talking about the Brahmaputra River, so Brahmaputra River, it actually is known as Yarlung Tsangpo, that actually starts from the Mansarovar Lake, and that is in China or in Tibet, it is called as Yarlung Tsangpo. Then it actually enters into the Arunachal Pradesh. Now, here in the Arunachal Pradesh, you can see that there is Lohit, which actually originates near the Kailash range in the Tibet, which actually flows along the India-China border and then enters into the Assam. Also, there is Laham, again, very important tributary of the Lohit River itself. Laham is basically a tributary of Lohit River, which rises in the eastern Tibet, flows through the Arunachal Pradesh. And then we have the other tributaries as well. We have Dibang, Nuha Deing, and even we have the other tributaries which are there. But when it comes to white-bellied heron, these two are quite important. When it comes to Lohit and Laham as well. Why they are important? Because when it comes to Laham, it actually represents nearly about 70% of the population that actually lives in India. And combinedly, when it comes to Laham and the Lohit, they are the major habitat for the white-bellied heron that we are talking about in today's session. Now, when it comes to the hydropower project, why we are going or why we are moving ahead for building up the hydropower projects in the Northeast region? Because when it comes to the complete capacity, so in a journal, it has been estimated that the total capacity of India, when it comes to hydroelectric power potential or the generation, is nearly about 145 gigawatt, out of which nearly about 50% share is that there is in the northeast of India, the potential hydropower generation capacity. And also India tends to be the net zero by 2070. And that is why when it comes to the hydropower, it actually gives us or it offers us the dispatchable and the storage backed renewable energy. And this is where actually it is better than the solar or the wind energy, because it is able to, we are able to ramp up the generation or the hydropower electric generation instantly to meet the peak demand as compared to the solar and the wind power generation. Now, as we are moving towards the net zero target, and that is, we have the, when it comes to the target, that is to 2070. So the Northeast steep and the fast flowing rivers, they are basically seen as the country's largest untapped clean energy reserve. And that is why we are moving towards the hydropower project or the electricity generation in the Northeast region. So over here, you can see that ultimately when it comes to Arunachal Pradesh, so Arunachal Pradesh has a lot of the potential when it comes to hydropower, generation, or you can say that this is basically hydropower storehouse where it has nearly about 58 to 60 of the gigawatt theoretical potential. That is nearly about 7% of the India's total generational capacity. And also over here, this is quite important that when it comes to the installed capacity of the hydropower projects that we have in India and the estimated potential that is there in the Arunachal Pradesh. So the estimated potential of the Arunachal Pradesh is more than as compared to the whole installed capacity that we have in India at present or currently. Now, this is quite important because you may see that when it comes to the hydropower projects, so they are termed as renewable energy resources. But then we have the environmentalists, they actually oppose the projects. Now, why is this? Because of the displacement, because of the cutting and felling of the trees, and even because of the hydropower projects, what happens is that the organic matter, this is turned and this is decomposed, which actually releases the methane, which is again a greenhouse gas. Also, when it comes to the dams construction, that actually lead to fragmentation of the rivers, which actually alters the complete, the water flow. It also alters the migration of the fish stocks, and even it leads to the siltation as well, which is again, when it comes to the problem, so that, that raises the other problems or the environmental problems as well. Now, this is also very important when it comes to terming the hydropower electric projects as the renewable. This is all about the source of the fuel. That is basically the water is the renewable resource that we are talking about. But when it comes to the complete perspective, or when it comes to the complete, ecological perspective that I may say, so it is actually not as clean as it is, thought to be. Now, this is quite important that the dam that we are talking about or the hydropower project that we are talking about is Kalai-II, which is basically where the complete process, it actually breaks down. Now, this project is to the tune of 1200 megawatt generation. That will be a run of the river project on the Lohit River in Anjao district of Arunachal Pradesh. Now, here it is quite important that there is the proposal that there will be total 33,338 trees that will be felled for the project. And ultimately, this is quite important because there will be 50 kilometer upstream that where we have the Walong Kant. Now, this Walong Kant is basically where we have the breeding site for the White-bellied Heron as well. Now, this complete project will be undertaken by THDC or WAPCOs as well, which are the developer, and the EIA consultancy, which is basically under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. So the white-bellied heron, it was absent from the list of the species assessed as impacted in the project's EIA or the environmental impact assessment. Now, this is quite important because ultimately, despite its documented presence upstream, the Forest Advisory Committee have granted the approval anyway on the condition that the Wildlife Institute of India separately with the project's wildlife management plan as well. And that is why this is quite important because the white-bellied heron, it was actually not included in the environmental impact assessment. So this is quite important that this is the hydroelectric project that we are talking about, the Kalai-II, that will be based upon the Lohit River. Now, this is basically run-of-the-river project that will be there in the lower Dibang Valley, and ultimately it is near Kibutu as well, which is basically the easternmost village or easternmost site when it comes to the India also. Now, this is quite important because this will be the part of the cascade of the projects that will be there on the Lohit River, where actually it will contribute to the India's clean energy transition. But at the same time, it will be also one of the largest single ROR projects in India as well. Now, here it is quite important to note that when it comes to the complete threat that will be there from the dam for the White-bellied Heron. So there will be alterations of the river flow and the turbidity as well that will actually, or that may reduce the fish availability. There will be also the clearing and submergence of the riparian forest that may destroy the nesting and the roasting sites, and even the increased construction and the human activity, it will disturb species that actually prefer that there should be the undisturbed habitats. Also, the changes in the river courses, the sand extraction, the pollution and the reduced water flow, it will actually further the threaten of its survival in the region also. Now, this is quite important because ultimately when it comes to the absence of the species in the EIA or the environmental impact assessment, this was said that the species was excluded because it was not recorded within the immediate diversion area. Even the conservationists, they have argued that the entire Lohit Basin, it should be assessed as one connected habitat and not that there should be the environmental impact assessment for the separate projects into the region. Also, the assessment reportedly overlooked the broader impacts on the feeding, breathing and the roosting areas and the compensatory afforestation which is done. Alright, what happens is that if there is a project that is undertaken, so there are the trees which are felled and then there is a compensatory afforestation which is done. Now, this compensatory afforestation, it is basically done far away at a faraway place, and that cannot fully recreate the complex ecology of the Eastern Himalayan river basin that we are talking about, because this region is also under the one of the biological hotspot region or biodiversity hotspot region that we have in the world. So again, the northeastern region, so the Eastern Himalayas region, that is included in the hotspot region, and that is why we are talking about the white-bellied heron that may go extinct in India because of this single dam that we are talking about. Now, why it is important that we must understand that the project-wise EIA or the environment impact assessment, they are actually not enough. The first thing is that there must be cumulative impact assessment. And ultimately, we should look at the combined effect of the multiple projects which are there on the one river system and not just one dam in the isolation. There also have to be river basin assessment where actually we must evaluate the ecological carrying capacity across the entire basin before clearing any of the individual projects. Also, there must be strategic environmental assessment where it should actually apply the environmental review at the policy or the plan level before the individual projects are even proposed, and there must be the total assessment of the carrying capacity as well, where it should be or it should set an ecological ceiling for a region so approval they do not exceed what the landscape can actually absorb. And that is what we must look after when it comes to the proposals or when it comes to the approval of the hydroelectric project or any of the infrastructural projects in the ecological sensitive areas. So I hope the complete issue is clear to you, and that would be all in this session. But before ending the session, let me tell you that we have the GS Foundation badge, that is P2I batches or the resolution P2I badge for the English medium. Now, where we have the evening batch in which you can enroll, and ultimately on the eve of the Guru Purnima, we are giving you the Guru Kripa offer where you get the 50% off, double validity and the mentorship that will be done by the rankers. And ultimately you can use the code that is BRS Live that will actually fetch you the maximum discount. And remember that this is just till 31st of July that you can enter into the badge. And that would be all in this session. Thank you very much, guys. But before that, let me tell you that you can enroll into the public administration batch as well. And also do not forget to like the session, do share the session with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so that you do not miss any of the updates in the future. So that would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care and Jai Hind.